evening and welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
My name is Paul Sickle. We are we are broadcasting. I'm sorry for we're live casting. That is, a few days ago. After you listen to this, so we're broadcasting live minus 4 or 5 days from an undisclosed location on the south side of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
We are indeed, and so.
Should I have said what side of Milwaukee, Wisconsin we're on?
That's fine. That's a fairly large area.
Yeah,
I don't think you're revealing. Okay. You're not revealing any classified information.
Whoa! But you know what? Vladimir Putin sponsored this podcast, and one of the things was that he gets to listen to it all. Including our pregame notes too.
We didn't want to give them. We don't want to give away too much with our. Our pending RT America negotiations, do we?
Well, they got some good people on there though. Ed Schultz, Tom Hartman.
Yeah.
So before we go too far, let's stick to Milwaukee for a second. How about Sheriff Clark, Scott? What do you think? He the soon-to-be former sheriff, David Clark of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin.
So Sheriff David Clark announced yesterday on, I believe it was on WISN, a common or a friendly home for Mr. Clark to air his grievances. So he announced on Vicki McKenna's show, I believe.
Sheriff Clark, openly, basically racist African American man he's racist against African Americans. He's a white supremacist African American sheriff, essentially, which is maybe a little. It's pretty much the position he takes, though, and he's, especially toward immigrants. He's just brutal. Like fascist, really, and. So he wants to use the sheriff's department to, enforce ICE rules. He wants to comply with the whole Trump thing. And meanwhile, he was so busy last year campaigning for Trump that he missed 4 people dying in the jails he ran, including a newborn child.
Yeah, that's just,
and a guy who hadn't had water in 8 days.
It's only 8 days.
This is supposed to be a civilized country.
It's supposed to be.
And we're in the middle of the heartland here, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we had a baby die in the jail, and we had somebody without water for 8 days die in the jail.
And it's unacceptable. And
under his watch.
Yeah.
While he was out campaigning for Trump, basically.
Right. And, the thing of it is that, fine, the best face you can put on it from in Clark's favor is that fine. He wasn't okay with this. That he didn't obviously endorse this type of treatment in his jail. But what have we heard from him? We've heard nothing from him on this in terms of any kind of empathy for the victims' families,
right. We haven't. Right, exactly. He hasn't even said he feels bad about it. Not only that, but shit roll. Look, it's unacceptable. Children should not die in jail.
It's not in the United States of America.
Children shouldn't die in any jail.
I know, but I think we uphold the values, or we say we do.
Right, especially newborn children. People should not be held without water for a week or 8 days and then dying. That should not happen. That is a war crime.
I think it pretty much fits the textbook definition of cruel and unusual punishment.
Exactly. And so this happened while he was out campaigning for Trump, and maybe he wasn't the person who took the water away or whatever, but he's the person who understaffed the jails.
Absolutely.
He is the person who refused to do any of the jail to work stuff that there used to be in the Milwaukee County jail system.
Correct.
And let's be honest, Milwaukee County is a big, a relatively large county. It's about 950,000 people. Mm-hmm. It's by far has most people in poverty, most diverse area in the state of Wisconsin by far.
Yeah.
And it and not everybody has the perfect circumstances.
No.
And I'm not trying to accuse somebody who did something to land themselves in jail. A lot of times, most of the time probably, they belong in jail, at least for a few days. But
that doesn't mean they deserve to go a week without water.
No, it doesn't. And not only that, but rehabilitation or different programs to help train people, inmates, can actually empower people to live a better life when they're not in jail and reduce recidivism, improve the community, and so on and so forth. These are not things Clark's ever been interested in.
No.
But he has been interested in Trump. And I think shit rolls downhill. Yeah. He's the boss, whether he or,
whether he wants to admit it or not.
Guy below him.
Right.
And he doesn't deserve, at the very least, he was managing this place. How does he deserve a promotion, which is exactly what Donald Trump just gave him?
So apparently he is going to be the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security for Intergovernmental Affairs, which means he'll be basically a liaison to local law enforcement and to...
So he's going to tell all the other sheriff's departments in urban areas that it's okay to starve people from water for 8 days in a row.
Correct.
Okay. All right. If a baby dies in prison, so be it. Right after it's born from its mother, in America we won't care about that anymore.
Apparently not.
Is that really how we're running things in this country?
I guess.
These days.
But
I apologize to the rest of the country, by the way. The other 49 states and the other 71 counties in this state outside of Milwaukee County who are now being subjected to this man's whims.
I guess you could say our gain is their loss,
so to speak.
Then again, the procedures under the Wisconsin Constitution will now dictate that our fearless leader Scott Walker gets to appoint
That's true, but that's the last topic. We can't talk about. It could lead to the last topic.
Well,
the 2018 election.
There will be a 2018 election, regardless of what happens. But if Clark leaves, assuming this is official, I digress for a second, but there has been no official announcement from the Trump administration. This is all coming from Clark. So, I guess I assume.
So he could be bluffing and.
Well, I don't know. I'm assuming he went through interviews and they made him an offer. Maybe it's contingent on him, passing a urine test and not getting a background check.
And, not getting a fight over the Dallas Cowboys on an airplane with a filmmaker from River West. Wow. Yeah, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar, that happened. He got insulted by a local Packer fan, which we're in Wisconsin, so most people are Packer fans, and he was wearing a Cowboys jersey on his way down to Dallas right before the Packer-Cowboy playoff game last year, which the Packers did win, by the way. Yes. But anyway, Rodgers threw a really nice pass near the end, and some Mason Crosby kicked some field goals.
It was an amazing game.
It was a great game. Anyhow, this kid, this young man from River West, a couple neighborhoods north of here, said, "Are you Sheriff Clark?" and references kind of his cowboy get up. Like he literally had cowboy attire, Dallas Cowboys attire on. Yeah. And Clark acknowledged that he was, and the kid kind of
shook his head and walked away.
Right. Nothing else. Yeah. So went to his seat, and upon landing, actually it was from Dallas to Milwaukee.
Right.
Was a flight, and Clark had the kid shaken down. So please, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, whoever you are, do not broadcast us this podcast. Do not play this on an airplane. Do not let Clark hear this, because we don't want to be shaken down the next time we fly.
Preferably not.
We want to keep the friendly skies friendly despite all the headlines these days. So, Clark, I can't fucking believe it. Well, I can believe it, because he wouldn't be reelected.
No, well, we talked about it previously, that he was going to have to find something else to do leading up to next year, because his reelect chances were nil and decreasing week by week, especially given his ties to this administration. Right. And, it's not doing him any favors.
So we're quickly moving from the local, or slowly, I should say, moving from the local scene to the international scene. In the meantime, we should just quickly cover the national scene, which is the big transfer of wealth from everybody who works for a living to the 1%, called the Health Care Bill, American Health Care Act.
I don't know, Paul. Is it? I mean, I'm good with local politics. I mean, has there really been any news on a national front this past week?
Just a bit.
Okay.
And what we wonder is this a smokescreen? What I wonder is if it's a smokescreen for them being able to do whatever the hell they want on the health care.
So, okay. So, I mean,
I'm not saying, I don't mean to diminish what Trump's been up to.
Not at all.
But, you know, some of these stories, it's like, I'm not sure that the average American that voted for Trump or even voted for Clinton but may not be that invested in beltway politics, if you will, you know, really cares about that as much as they care about whether or not they or their family members will be able to afford health insurance in the next 5 years or its future beyond that.
So, okay. Well, so we've been, should I say off the air? I don't know if that's even technically the correct terminology.
Off the web or off the whatever the fuck it is. Yeah, I don't know.
So,
okay.
I was out of the country for a few days. I went to Costa Rica and just kind of had a little reprieve and enjoyed myself. Managed to get back into the country.
There was a rumor that he wasn't going to come back.
It's when you're down there, honestly, it's tempting.
And the problem is they had children, and there wasn't a plan to... There wasn't a plan to export the children.
No,
that's why they had to come back to Milwaukee.
I didn't have my ducks in a row on that front.
Right. So,
but I did come back. I didn't get accosted by any county sheriffs. So I made
that's good. And you made it through customs as well.
I did with minimal imposition.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's been a few things that have taken place this past week. So just right down the list, we had since the last podcast.
Yeah,
which was about a week and a half ago.
Okay.
Not long, not ancient history.
Right.
So we had the firing of Jim Comey.
Right.
From the FBI. We had the revealing of classified information to Russia in the closed meeting.
Did I just call it the Russian leak?
You could just call it that.
Yeah, it wasn't even. It was a leak from the President of the United States.
I don't even know if that qualifies as a leak. But
yeah.
So then the revelation the next day that Trump, quote unquote, encouraged Comey to shut down the investigation of Michael Flynn. And then a few days ago, we had the appointment of Robert Mueller, former head of the FBI, during the Bush administration.
From Rosenstein.
Rosenstein.
Okay.
Rod Rosenstein, who is the assistant attorney general, since Jeff Sessions has technically recused himself from the Russia
Is Rosenstein a holdover from the Obama era, or what's his background?
So he was appointed... Remember, Sally Yates got
canned, right.
And she was assistant attorney general.
Right.
She was the holdover. So Rod Rosenstein, he was prior to his appointment at Justice, he was a U.S. attorney for a district in for Maryland, and then he was before that he was a nominee for U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. So
who was nominating him?
Was I'd have to look back. That I don't know when that was.
Okay.
So.
Well, if we were following parliamentary procedure, granted, that's kind of passé these days.
But Trump was the one that made him assistant AG.
But did he get? I'll look up. I'll do the Wikipedia research while you get us back on topic here.
Keep us on track.
So Rosenstein did approve of an independent counsel.
He did.
So that happened.
But what's interesting with that is that when they fired Comey, they put this whole thing out about, and they had a letter from Rosenstein recommending. He was like 2 weeks into the job.
Mm-hmm.
He had a letter drafted that was to Sessions recommending Comey's dismissal as head of the FBI. Sessions then writes his own letter attaches this letter from Rod Rosenstein, and then forwards a recommendation to Trump, saying, "Hey, this, my assistant AG is recommending Comey's dismissal. I'm on board with this. We recommend this is the course of action you pursue." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. And then Trump fires Comey.
So Rosenstein looks like sort of a Republican, although he's served under the last three administrations: George W. Bush's, Barack Obama's, and Donald Trump's.
Correct.
But he also had been nominated. He was a counsel to the Deputy Attorney General under the Clinton administration as well. So, I mean, the guy's got pretty solid bipartisan agendas. He's worked for the last 4 presidents of the United States.
Well, I think he likes it. I think he likes his work.
2 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
I don't think he sees himself. At least from the outside looking in, it doesn't appear that he sees himself as inherently political in his position.
No, it doesn't look like it.
And from everything we're hearing,
kind of like a Comey, almost, if you will.
Right.
Although Comey did kind of have a more right-leaning bent, actually.
But the interesting thing about it is, so initially when Comey was fired, they tried to pin the whole thing on Rosenstein, like it was his idea. He had been in the job like 2 weeks,
right?
And he comes in like guns blazing, I guess, and he's like, "Hey, my first act as Assistant Attorney General to Jeff Sessions is going to be to recommend the firing of Jim Comey."
So we agreed. Just by the way, the parliamentary procedure here would, like I said, it's sort of passé these days. But would say we should have talked about healthcare just a minute longer, but that was like about 8 minutes ago.
This is an organic process, my friend. We gotta go with where the actions are.
But I bring this up because perhaps all of this does provide some sort of elaborate cover for them to do whatever the hell they want on a healthcare bill.
Sure.
Which really is the kind of thing that's going to directly impact millions, most Americans' lives, actually.
Absolutely. So yeah, to kind of circle back to that, so Rosenstein, he's basically accountable for the firing of Comey, but then Trump basically goes, he talks to NBC News, says that he was going to fire him anyway, which overwrote like two days worth of coverage where Republican operatives were out there saying this was Rosenstein's idea. So anyway, long story short, we know that Trump just had this in mind and he was looking for an excuse.
Right.
So
and so the big conspiracy is that Comey was getting a little too close on Russia.
Something like that. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, right? So, to paraphrase our former defense secretary,
if that wasn't enough, Trump decided to use like the next day after firing Comey to divulge classified information to the Russian ambassador.
Yes, which we still don't know all the repercussions from that.
It might cost our relationship with Israel a little bit.
Well, yes,
right.
Or a worst case scenario, it could cost some undercover operatives their lives, and people that are embedded with ISIS. So this all comes back, as you mentioned, to the appointment of the special counsel, who is Robert Mueller, former FBI head, as we mentioned. And so does this give them cover because now we have a special counsel? Does it take the pressure off the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees to thoroughly vet information, get subpoenas, etc.? And I would say, yeah. I mean, if I'm Paul Ryan or I'm Mitch McConnell or anybody in leadership in Congress, I'm going to say, yes, let's let the fact-finding missions begin.
Let's get back to work on domestic policy.
Let's in the meantime, while justice is being done, let's focus on the people's business and make sure that healthcare is affordable and that people's taxes are.
Let's make sure that the rich are much richer and that everybody else, 133 million Americans, which may not be most, I might have misstated, about 45% of Americans are at risk of losing their health insurance because they might have a pre-existing condition.
Not sure that's in line with what the talking points would be if you're somebody in
Republican leadership. Sorry, I apologize. Come on, they're gonna. They always act like they're not crazy about Trump. They're not sure about him.
No, they will use him as a tool.
It's just a smokescreen for them to pass this crazy agenda, which is just war on not only the poor, but most working Americans.
Yeah, but that's
a huge number of working Americans.
We know going back to last year that most of the Republican leadership was not on board with Trump being the nominee. Once he secured nomination and won the presidency, obviously they were going to use him for everything they could, from getting Gorsuch on the Supreme Court to passing any kind of healthcare legislation they can, to tax cuts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, is it a smokescreen? Well, maybe they're definitely going to try to use it as such. I don't know that it may or may not be effective, because a special counsel is not a process that's going to resolve itself overnight. And
it's going to keep a cloud of suspicion over a Republican administration, which is going to hurt everything Republicans do.
Well, then that's the thing. So does it take the wind out of the sails of any kind of major legislation versus where they were a month ago?
I don't know. The Democrats are so good at losing elections. Who knows?
Well,
I mean, if they can win the Ossoff and the Montana race,
which are neck and neck right now,
that would be at least a positive sign.
Yeah.
Although I don't think it still would be very convincing unless they carry the Virginia and New Jersey gubernatorial elections at the end of the year.
If you win a place like Georgia, you win in a place like Montana. I mean, that's pretty big news. And if they lose those elections, they're going to be pummeled by it, and Trump will be on the mountaintop.
Except that those are Republican seats.
They are, but they're going to say that, all this out-of-state money, and the Democrats gave it 110%, and it didn't work, yada, yada.
Right. And I think there's a pretty good chance that it will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, just because they are conservative districts. And plus, I think a lot of conservatives are going to start feeling under siege, and a lot of Trump backers will feel under siege and be more likely to get and rally around kind of their crazy right-wing flag, because they need to do that. And so, I mean, there's a lot of, if you read the 538 stuff, their podcasts, they might have a little bit higher listenership than we do, the 538.
Maybe.
I'm sorry well, here's to you, Harry Enton and Nate Silver, Claire Malone, and the rest of the
gang.
There. I think, though, if you look at that, they said that there isn't that, winning special elections doesn't really show much toward the midterms. In fact, the Democrats did quite well in special elections the year after Obama was reelected, and then did terribly.
Yeah.
In the 2010 elections.
Sure.
So it just says, I mean, the correlation isn't quite clear. Plus, we're in the era of Trump. I mean, we also don't know if he'll accidentally start a nuclear war.
Well, there's
all
kinds of wild cards.
I remember we had the Fallout Shelter Company sponsoring one of our podcasts. Yeah, we got to get them back into this thing here.
We do.
Partly because I need enough money to buy a freaking Fallout Shelter.
An actual Fallout Shelter.
Right. But also...
So, I mean, in terms of what it actually means for healthcare legislation, I mean, it sounds like the Senate is thoroughly debating the issue. They have a working group of, I think, 13 senators or something like that. And I really don't know what they're going to come up with.
They're not thoroughly debating the issue. Unless you're going to tell me they're going to leave the taxes in there and not do the big tax cut for the billionaires.
I think
they're not thoroughly debating it.
There's a lot.
You think there's a chance of the tax that they'll pull the tax cuts out?
I don't know. I think everything's on the table when you talk about the Senate, because they're going to try to.
That's the big wealth transfer for all of this stuff.
Right.
Ron Johnson had pointed to this program they have in Maine, which I guess is an okay thing for pre-existing conditions. It's a weird little thing, but the bottom line is, for it to work, it costs a lot of money.
True.
And in a smaller state like Maine, it's a little easier to pull off too. But I think just because but you got to have money, and you can't just give away a huge amount of the money in a tax break to the rich, unless you really were to break up the frickin' insurance oligopoly over our healthcare system. Guess what? That's not happening.
No.
This is for the insurance companies. As far as I can tell, the main beneficiaries of Trump care are rich people, and then secondly, insurance companies getting at least taken care of and staying even at very worst. Nobody else benefits other than extremely rich people or insurance company executives. Everybody else suffers, including most people in the Milwaukee area, most well-off people, frankly. People who make less than $1 million a year. The 99%, we don't succeed under this bill.
Well, we still don't know what this bill is going to look like. We don't know what the Medicaid funding is going to look like.
I know the 99% loses as long as they have that tax cut in there.
Well,
I mean, they need the funding. That funding, unless we're going to really bust up the insurance companies, that's not going to happen. Well, if we did single payer, maybe we could afford to pay less toward health care.
I still don't put it past, though, and there was an article in the Week this week about that that Republicans are one of the options they're looking at is replacing Obamacare with Obamacare, which will essentially be like a symbolic thing. They'll do some things around the edges, and maybe they'll do something with taxes to allow them to pass a tax reform bill, but largely leave the healthcare bill intact, and then maybe they send it back to the House, and maybe the politics by that point, given what's going on with Trump, are such that they're going to force the members to vote on it and say, like, hey, we have to claim some sort of victory because otherwise there's going to be a bloodbath next year in the midterms. We have to give our base some reason to come out and say,
right. And our job is not Republicans, is to make it a bloodbath regardless.
Yes, of course.
Because if they don't pass it, well, they're on the cusp of passing it.
Yeah.
And if they do pass it, Lord knows. I mean, we really got a lot to fix. Otherwise, hundreds of millions of people probably are at risk.
Yeah.
Because when you start factoring the Medicare, one of the things that the tax increase paid for was Medicare stabilization.
Yes.
So then that, in addition to the 133 million people who are at risk of either losing their insurance outright or being discriminated against for pre-existing conditions, and that's like almost 45% of the country's population right there. Mm-hmm. You also have everybody who's on Social Security, which is another almost 15 to 20% of the population, or not Social Security, Medicare, being at risk from the destabilization of it. So you really are talking about a majority of Americans stand to be almost immediately hurt by this, or within the next 5 years. I don't know, Paul. I mean, what do you foresee? What do you think they're going to do? I mean, we don't even have a CBO score yet on the House bill that passed 2 weeks ago. At this point, I think the last I heard is that it's going to come out Monday.
I think
it's supposed to come out Monday.
This next week, right? Yeah, because it took longer to score this one because of the fact they're giving this waiver to the states about whether or not they want to accept the pre-existing condition rules. So they have to do some kind of assessment of the states, each of the states, and what the likelihood is that those legislatures are going to keep this in place, or if they're going to be able to pass some kind of override given the politics. So I think that's added a lot of time to the assessment by the Congressional Budget Office. So Monday, I guess, is the day you're saying.
So you're asking me what I think?
Yeah. What do you think's gonna? What do you see?
I think that they're going to pass something that's going to hurt a large number of Americans. It may, mitigate it somewhat, but it will still have a negative effect on insurance coverage and healthcare costs for most Americans, my guess is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it protects most Americans, then it will certainly just take insurance outright from at least a few million Americans, which in the end of the day will probably still hurt most people because of the way that when people can't, uncompensated care gets paid for is through higher healthcare prices for everybody else.
But would you agree though that whatever comes out of the Senate is going to be less conservative than what the House just passed, or no?
Probably, but not enough
not
to
drastically
be worth it. Passing, right? You're still going to have. Basically, you're still going to have at least some tax cuts to the top 1%.
Right.
And
they need the tax cut part because that's what they're banking on that literally to get the next initiative through.
Everybody else is going to be stuck with higher costs, including some of the beneficiaries of the tax cut, frankly.
Yeah.
And a less functional health insurance system, and you're probably going to have fewer insured and so on and so forth. Yeah. So you're going to have a less healthy country and a higher cost, medical structure. I mean, I think in exchange for giving some tax cuts to wealthy people, and that's the best case scenario, honestly.
There's some, I don't want to call them intriguing ideas. There's some interesting, somewhat surprising things that I've heard being bantered about by guys like Lamar Alexander, who are endorsing, or not officially, or at least unofficially at this point, proposing things like mandatory enrollment into health insurance policies, but these wouldn't be comprehensive plans. It would be something like you would put people at a basic level of care where they would get I guess what we
but
used to
you're still going to have maternity care taken out of it,
which means things that we used to consider catastrophic coverage.
Yeah, I don't know. The fact that policy doesn't have to provide maternity coverage, I mean, that's not real health.
Well, I mean, look at who you're dealing with. I mean, these people, that's not they
all had to get born.
Well, a lot of them still don't believe that health insurance is a right.
Do they believe that they were born from a mother? Maternity care is pretty important. I guess you got out of the womb. That's great. I mean, you might be a sex.
You're lucky that you were born into a home with heat and food.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The idea that maternity care wouldn't be considered an essential service. I think that this does provide a convenient smokescreen. Mm-hmm. It does potentially sink people's faith in doing anything that Trump will sign.
Yeah.
So it might make them look for coming up with a compromise that they know the House Freedom Caucus would never pass, so that they can say it got stuck in the legislature and they can each point the finger at each other.
I think the current events definitely increases the likelihood that whatever the Senate passes, there's going to be more pressure from the leadership to pass whatever the Senate comes up with, because everybody realizes on their side of the fence that they can't afford a loss.
So now is the time, in my opinion, for the future, is to be looking at, developing things at the local level. Mm-hmm.
State legislatures, governorships.
All of these things. So if they do really, one of the worst things, too, is that the tax cut just guts Medicaid.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so it's not just the pre-existing conditions, it's not just essential health services. It's Medicaid, which pays for 60% of all nursing home patients. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, in addition to basic care for poor children and adults as well. But this is, it's a life and death issue as far as I can tell. It's a huge issue, cutting Medicaid. And so where there's Medicaid cuts, states can make up for the gap. They will have to raise their taxes. Yeah. They will have to say it's a priority for us to have a healthy population above having, and we're going to have to take back the tax increase, the tax cuts that went to the rich. They'll have to do that at the risk of saying, people saying, Wisconsin's too high tax. I'm moving to frickin' Florida where it's warm and I don't have to pay taxes or whatever. They will have to do that at the risk of the interstate competition, which was a big topic leading up to kind of the Act 10 battles. Yeah. And that will come back. But if we are to be a moral society, I think that it's something that people in the states need to do, is say, you know what, maybe having low tax rates for wealthy retirees isn't as important as having basic health care for all people, including children and people in poverty.
Well, I mean, you have to look at our
And nursing home residents, older people who aren't wealthy.
Sure.
So,
well, I mean, considering you have a lot of governors, though, like our own Scott Walker, who didn't take the Medicaid money. Our budget's a mess.
Suffered
and we would have been a lot better off if we would have taken the Medicaid expansion money.
So I think this is why the 2018 elections will be so important, and why we need to start seeing local leaders.
Yeah,
They need to speak up about the healthcare stuff.
Absolutely.
I think that's the one that, because a local leader, local political organizations could talk all they want about Comey and Mueller and Putin and Russia and Flynn, you name it.
yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's not going to win you a seat in the state legislature, and it's not going to win you a governorship either.
Yeah.
Well,
it may win some, but it's not going to. It's battle versus winning the war, right?
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, and that's the other thing. We were kind of talking before this about being prepared for the next big thing, right?
Right.
And so let's say, like, best case scenario for us, worst case scenario for them. Trump goes down in a ball of flames, either now or later, whenever it occurs. And then we got President Pence for the balance of the term.
Or he just stays unpopular.
Or he just stays unpopular, and then the bleeding never stops. And,
right. Some of me thinks maybe we should Democrats should refuse to impeach him.
Well,
just be like, look, this is who you guys wanted.
The special counsel is going to take at least a year, maybe two, to complete its job. So anybody who's hoping for an overnight success, you better level set your expectations there.
So under this best case scenario, where are you going here?
Well, so let's say we're a little we're about a year and a half away from the midterms, and so let's say the Democrats, what they have to get 24 seats at this point, 25 seats.
I think so,
and so they get
maybe
that
22.
They get at least that. Let's say let's say they take 30,
right,
30 to 40,
right.
So they have the House. Maybe they don't lose the Senate seats badly that they have.
They probably lose one or two, even under
probably.
The best case scenario. Because of the map,
you're going to lose a Manchin, or you're going to lose, Claire McCaskill.
I think McCaskill's the one that. Well, actually, Heidi Heitkamp, up in North Dakota, which is the one state which is like it's such a petrol state.
Yeah,
that they'll do anything for drill baby drill Trump at this point. That's going to become the reddest state in the country pretty soon.
That's kind of how it's going.
It used to be red, but not that red.
Well, they had two Democratic senators.
Right.
When I was in D.C., it was Byron Dorgan and Ken Conrad, the two Democratic senators from North Dakota.
Good recall.
And I mean, look at in short order over the past decade and a half or so, where have you come?
Well, but also North Dakota is a major oil producing state, which it wasn't 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, or at least 15 years ago, it certainly was.
It's just an indication of how quickly things can change. And so we had in Wisconsin for years, we kind of had that defense mechanism of, well, there's no way that that Wisconsin will go for Trump. We haven't voted for Republicans since Reagan Mondale.
No, that doesn't always work like that.
And I put myself in that camp. You resign yourself to the fact that history has shown you the way, and forgetting that things
past performance is no guarantee of future.
No,
right?
Definitely not in this day and age. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if we take the House next year, and that puts a lot of power in the Democrats' camp in terms of being able to. The subpoena power and investigations, and you can do all that, but you also have to think about what you're going to do with the legislative agenda and what kind of policies you're going to push, because Trump is a temporary phenomenon. It's going to seem like a forever phenomenon for a lot of us, because we're only a few months in, and it seemed like.
I mean, what's their next big thing?
You have to fight. You have to continue to fight the battle of ideas. Well, you have to think about what you actually believe about when you're talking about things like healthcare. When you're talking about what do we want to do when it comes to the challenges of the world around things like Syria,
Right.
What do we want to do? What in terms of our relationship to the European Union? These are big picture issues, and the Democrats need to have a solid response on them. It's they can't continue to kind of hedge their bets and say like, well, we're just going to.
So I would argue.
There needs to be a vision. Is what
I would argue that foreign policy, most of the stuff is just a reset to normality.
Yeah,
because that's what I think. Not even that was a great scenario, but this seems really unstable and dangerous.
Yes. Especially when we talk about things like North Korea.
Preferable. But I would argue that the state level, that's where you start fighting this whole wealth transfer upward, where you start saying, you know what, we are going to raise taxes on people that have done better, and we're not going to do it to punish success in the state. We're going to do it so that everybody has the chance to succeed.
Well,
in the state,
and I mean, Trump had a window where when he came in, where he could have made the first big thing that he wanted to pursue, infrastructure, and I think he could have actually gotten some bipartisan support on that. Mm-hmm. I think that goes without saying, but he chose like straight out of the gate to do. He pursued this immigration disaster. Then he went to healthcare, and then then tax reform is going to be the next thing. It was just poor ass planning.
Okay.
I mean, I think he could have actually gotten infrastructure done straight away. He would have had a huge victory. He would have been able to milk that for a while. He probably would have had an approval rating in the 50s.
Yeah, this would have been, especially with the low bond rates, it would have been a good time.
Absolutely.
To do that. So I mean,
I guess if you're going to talk about what's one issue that Democrats can definitely get behind is talk about those infrastructure issues.
Trump promised to empower the working class,
and
he didn't, and he totally didn't do it.
He completely let them down.
Worked the other way.
He used them for their votes, and then pivoted to something completely different. So now
the Democrats need to come up with a totally new message, which is that we are going to empower the working class. We're going to do it at the expense, frankly, of people who have been most successful. Again, not to punish success, but to ensure success for everyone.
Yes.
Ensure the opportunity. I'm sorry, not ensure success, but we're going to raise taxes on those who have the ability to pay, not to punish success, but to offer a chance for success to everybody in our state. And I think though that with this interstate competition, where you have well, you should go to a red state because it's lower taxes. Of course, it always happens to be these red states are always in warm climates too. That doesn't have anything to do with it, like in February when it's 20 below
right
here. But
not this year in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, but it's May right now, and it's like back to 40 degrees again. It's like almost June.
Yeah,
I mean tomorrow's high is 49, right? So I mean, you don't get that in Arizona.
Yeah.
However, I think we can say that we need everybody in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's gonna be great again when everybody has a chance at success.
Definitely.
And I don't think anybody really feels like that right
no,
now.
I
Whether
think
you're in Milwaukee or Kimberly or Kaukauna or Superior or Eau Claire.
Sure. And I mean, and Trump taps into that anxiety. Right. And what I'm saying is the Democrats need to harness the failure that gap that Trump laid out there when he didn't come in, gangbusters like for repairing roads and water lines and airports and all these things.
Right.
I mean, that needs to be what Democrats are all about.
And Democrats need to stop at the state level saying, "Oh, well, we're going to make our workforce more competitive." No, we're going to reward workers in our state. That's what and they need to do it. One of the things that I think we need to see happen is this won't work real well. Unless if Democrats say win the governorship in Wisconsin, but not in Michigan, or Michigan and Iowa, but not Wisconsin and Illinois, or so on and so forth, you got to do it in regional blocks.
Sure.
And I'm hoping that we can see a sharp move back to more progressive, actual progressive, like Wellstone, like Democrats in the Midwest. and I would even throw Pennsylvania in there, everywhere from Pennsylvania to Iowa, including Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, even all that area. We need strong progressive Democrats elected in 2018 in all those states, because then that whole thing, well, I'm going to move. Fine, you know what? Maybe you'll move to Arizona, or maybe you won't. But at least you start having regional blocks where the interstate competition doesn't happen as much at the local level.
Well,
because I think that's how we empower working people, is at the local level now. That's what local and state level.
Yeah, well, that's where it has to go. I mean, the Democrats lost so much ground over the past few decades by not focusing on the local.
And frankly, it's not like Obama really did do that much to catch up the working class, relatively speaking. I mean, he tried and he did. He worked on inequality. Healthcare was the biggest thing he did on that. But besides that, I mean, Obama and even Clinton, I mean, we really haven't been able to see the working class get empowered at the federal level, even under Democrats. It's much better than under Republicans, but it's not like it's huge. I think at the state level, you can maybe start having more impact in some ways.
Well, there'll be a lot more to talk about along the details and how we get to that. And we've got...
we're at 50 minutes. I don't know how you possibly listen to this whole thing. You suffering listener, you.
Well, I'll probably cut out at least 40 minutes of this.
Oh, there you go. All right. It's 7 minutes. Enjoy 7 minutes of power.
It's a pod. It's not a podcast. It's a pod.
Pod blast.
It's a pod.
There you go.
So yeah, we've got the Democratic convention coming up here in Wisconsin and Middleton at the end of the month. So we'll hopefully be able to cover that and get some news from that on around some of these details about how in a state like Wisconsin we're going to get to what Paul just talked about.
Is at least since we're from Milwaukee, interview when we're there. Rob Hansen, the Milwaukee County Democratic Party chair, and Marina Dimitrievich, the Working Families of Wisconsin Party director.
We hope to talk to some of those folks, and so there'll be more news to come on that, and we'll continue to pursue whatever direction we think things should move in.
So. Both Rob and Marina are from the South Side.
Oh, perfect.
There you go. All right. See you later.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And forward.